You're listening to Terms of Engagement. I'm Archon Fung, a professor at the Harvard Kennedy School and the director of the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation.
And I'm Stephen Richer, the former elected Maricopa County recorder and now a senior practice fellow at the Ash Center at Harvard Kennedy School.
We're back for our 5th episode of this weekly series of Terms of Engagement, and we're live. So don't forget to put comments in the chat, questions, and feedback. My background here is a little bit different because I'm streaming from the faculty lounge of the Political Science Department at Tulane University in New Orleans, which is Stephen's alma mater. Over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, and now soon to be your sons as well.
Yeah.
Positive undergraduate experience. But today we're going to be talking about art and television as a form of political commentary, as a form of resistance potentially. And of course, the subject that teed that up recently was the first episode of the new season of South Park, which is now owned by Paramount, which of course has had a number of dealings with the Trump administration and with the president specifically as of late. And to join us today, we are going to be joined by Michelle Goldberg, who's an opinion columnist at the New York Times. She previously wrote for Slate before moving over to the New York Times. Her opinion piece is one of the ones that I consistently read. And then also of interest to this group and to this viewership, she is the author of the book Kingdom Coming: The Rise of Christian Nationalism, which is available on Amazon. And most importantly, she has, I think, a 12-year-old son who is allowed to watch South Park according to her recent opinion piece on this very topic. So welcome, Michelle.
Hi, and nobody call CPS, please.
I figured it was fair game because you put it into the opinion piece.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
As always, before we get started, we should note that we are definitely speaking as individuals and not on behalf of Harvard, the Harvard Kennedy School, the Ash Center, or any institutional fragment of the university. Little segment recap here. So Paramount has signed reportedly a $1.5 billion 5-year streaming deal with South Park. The creators of South Park are going to produce 50 more episodes as part of that deal. The last season, which just began, there's been 2 episodes so far, kicked off with an unsparing parody of President Trump. And the second episode featured skewering of Kristi Noem and ICE. Ratings have been high for millions of viewers. We want to get into a discussion of the show and some of the political response, but first we wanted to share a couple of our favorite clips from the show. A couple caveats here. First, a spoiler alert. We're going to be talking a lot about these episodes, so if you haven't seen them yet, stream us later. Hit pause if you don't want the spoilers. And then second, some of this content and some of our discussion of the comment is definitely not safe for work. So, Sarah, if you could start the 60 Minutes clip.
Oh God. The small town of South Park, Colorado is protesting against the president. The townspeople claim that the president, who is a great man.
A great man.
Great guy. We know he's probably watching. And we are just reporting on this town in Colorado that's being sued by the president, and they are fighting back.
And just to be clear, we don't agree with them.
No.
Okay, that's number one. And then the second clip is the Sermon on the Mount clip, which is the title of this episode. Sarah, if you could roll that.
My body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Now just eat the bread and listen. I didn't want to come back and be in the school, but I had to because it was part of a lawsuit and the agreement with Paramount.
President suing you?
The guy can do whatever he wants now that someone backed down, okay? Eat the bread, eat the bread. You guys saw what happened to CBS? Yeah, well, guess who owns CBS? Paramount. You really want to end up like Goldberg? You guys gotta stop being stupid.
We can't understand you.
Just shut up. We're going to get canceled, you idiots.
Tom, they're calling it the Sermon on the Mount. Hundreds of South Park faithful are flocking to the area where Jesus Christ continues to speak his words of wisdom.
If someone has the power of the presidency and also has the power to sue and take bribes, then he can do anything to anyone. It's the fucking president, dude! All of you shut the fuck up. South Park is over. It's fucking over. Just stop and shut the fuck up.
Okay, so South Park didn't take the proffered wisdom from Jesus Christ in that moment. They did not shut the F up. In fact, they're talking loudly. They talked again in episode 2.
Well, no, they didn't shut up, but they did make a pro-Trump PSA, which ends the episode as part of their settlement.
Pro-Trump PSA. So I'm. This was actually the first South Park episode that I've ever watched. Why are they doing this? Is this just because, as you suggested in your column, they like skewering everyone, or is this because they're at a new political moment?
Well, I think both. They kind of go where the taboos are, and in this moment, it's really clear where those taboos are. Right? This show that loves to take on sacred cows, that did these episodes mocking Scientology at a time when Scientology was trying to sue all of its critics into oblivion. And for many years, they were sort of seen as more right-leaning. Right? They were really ruthless with a lot of liberals, Michael Moore, Al Gore, Hillary Clinton. And there was even this book called South Park. I'm trying to remember. Was it South Park? Or South Park Republicans? South Park Conservative. Well, there was an article called South Park Republicans and a book called South Park Conservatives. And the idea at the time, this was during the George W. Bush administration, and these are kind of tropes that I think we see recurring, that liberals are, kind of drab and dour and censorious. And it's now the conservatives who are the party of free speech and transgression and fun. And, I think we saw that kind of recur with a vengeance during, kind of woke during the height of wokeness. But if you look at where we are now, the amount of kind of censorship, intimidation, absurd taboos that you see kind of coming down from this autocratic administration. One of my favorite moments in that first episode, again, I used to watch South Park when it first came out. My kid loves it. I tried to say that he couldn't watch it and then kind of gave up because it just makes me so happy. But so if you watch it, that there was this kind of long running affair between the devil, Satan, who's a character, and Saddam Hussein. And Saddam Hussein was pictured the same way Trump is pictured. They kind of just used a photo of him and made his mouth move. And so at one point, Saddam, in this new episode, now the devil is having an affair with Trump. At one point in this new episode, the devil says to Trump, you remind me of this guy I used to date, a lot. And so, I think that, in some ways, what's astonishing is not that South Park is going after this, kind of ridiculous, obscene, grotesque administration, but that more people aren't doing the same thing.
Right. So that's one of the striking things about the first episode is I think it's a pretty good primer on the power of authoritarian government. Everyone has to shut up, from the town of South Park, which has to pay, however millions of dollars and has to reduce its police force and make these PSAs, to the 60 Minutes people, to Jesus Christ himself, right? All are cowed by the power of government. And but then the meta part is that Matt Stone and Trey Parker are not, because they make the episode, which is a huge middle finger. Why did they get to do this when everybody else, including media organizations, universities, law firms, seems very much in the Jesus Christ town of South Park kind of school?
Yeah, because they have money, but lots of people have money.
Right, but to me that's the big mystery, and this is like a psychological mystery that maybe you can answer. One of you can answer for me, because I've never understood. I mean, I guess we can swear because we're talking about South Park. I've never understood why so many people with "fuck you" money don't say "fuck you." Right? I mean, I feel like they're behaving the way I would expect someone who has $1.5 billion to behave, and why the rest of these billionaires, I mean, some of these billionaires like what Trump is doing, but I think some are clearly just kind of bending the knee or going along to get along. why they don't have the same self-respect as Trey, as South Park's creators.
Cartman
I just,
Stone,
again,
yeah.
tell me, I mean, maybe you guys understand the political psychology.
Yeah, what do you think,
work.
Stephen?
Well, I don't have an answer to this, but I was thinking about this very question
me too.
last
Yeah.
night, and I was thinking two things. One, if you fear for physical violence, then obviously that changes the calculation, and that would make a lot of people more reasonably capitulate. And then two, the other excuse I could come up with is if you're running an organization where it's not just your livelihood and it's not your FU money that you can walk away from, but it's everyone within your organization, then you might feel a little more compelled to toe the party line. That being said, there are still plenty of people who are in a position where they can independently walk away from this. And the number of people who have chosen that and have chosen that at the level of these two, I mean, we can count on probably two hands. So why is it not happening? I think maybe just because I don't know. Archon, fire away. What do you got?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this also. It's really striking. One answer might be that humor and comedians get a little bit of a pass, but Stephen Colbert didn't get a pass, so that's probably not it. And, my second kind of darker thought was they haven't gone after Trey Parker and Matt Stone yet. I mean, would they do the same thing if they were threatened with personal investigations or threats of anti-Semitism? I mean, there's plenty of anti-Semitism in the show. I mean, if one were to make that accusation, would they react the same way or not? And part of that puzzle also is that when the White House comes back, they don't come back with, we're going to sue them, we're going to, deploy the FBI and AG Bondi on them. They say, well, South Park's not culturally relevant. So why such a soft counterpunch from...
Well, I think that, South Park has a certain an amount of credibility with parts of Trump's base that Stephen Colbert certainly doesn't have, right? There's a lot of comedians who are very clearly liberals, whereas South Park, Joe Rogan was laughing at the debut South Park episode, right? I think there's a huge overlap between the kind of bro-y podcast host that Trump was cultivating when he ran for president this time and South Park's fan base. And so if they really try to shut down South Park, I think maybe some people understand that it makes them look kind of priggish and humorlessness. It makes them look priggish and humorless in a way that could potentially really annoy some of the kind of voters that they need.
So let's talk about their response. I don't want to leave the question of why are these two of the very few people who have taken this stance. I want to circle back to that. But the response has been sort of split between the White House, which said this show hasn't been relevant for 20 years, and then Noam, the vice president, and others have gone so far as to sort of say, like, hey, isn't this neat? I'm going to make this even my profile picture. And they've tried to embrace it. So which do you guys think is the correct response?
Well, I don't think Noam has quite done that. Noam has sort of, said that it's sexist the way they've gone after her for her looks. JD Vance has embraced it, I think, or at least pretended to embrace it. I'm not hurt. I think this is great. Like, Charlie Kirk also, there's an episode in which, the most recent episode in which Cartman clearly kind of comes to embody Charlie Kirk. But, again, I think that this is like one of the few shows that can kind of hit them where it hurts. And so I think that's probably the right way to play it, to say like, oh, we're laughing along with them. But it's also why these two episodes have been so potent, because, I feel like there's a sense, I don't know if you guys feel it, like, is everybody else seeing this? Like,
yes,
what is
definitely
going? And that's the relief that this kind of that's the relief traditionally that comedy provides. But I think in this heightened environment where everything is both so awful and so surreal, their willingness to just say it, and to say it on a TV network owned by, to kind of call out their own parent company is, it's such a relief.
So is this was the episode more about Paramount, or was it more about President Trump?
I think it was more about Trump. I mean, it was partly about Paramount, and that was in there, but it was really about Trump, trying to sue them into submission. And, and also they're feeling that like they didn't like wokeness, but this extreme counter reaction has gone too far.
Yeah. Michelle, for me, part of the glory of the show, it was the glory of the First Amendment and someone taking full advantage of it when, I walk around campus and faculty and students and certainly international students, they're just afraid to say anything at all. And here's somebody saying it as loud as possible. Literally, the emperor has no clothes, right? That was the PSA. It was great. What has been the reaction of your colleagues in writing a whole column, when you write a whole column about South Park? Like in my different chats and stuff, people kind of think, well, it's funny what they're saying, but I don't know, is that a little bit too over the edge? Is that serious? Should we be like, what should we think of South Park as political commentary?
Well, I mean, I think what is serious and what is not serious is hard to parse, especially, I mean, I was looking at social media before we jumped on this conversation, and I'm watching, one of the president's chief advisors and one of the most powerful Republican congresswoman, a whore. I'm talking about this fight between Laura Loomer and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they're gilding the White House and planning a UFC cage match. So what is again, like what is serious and what is not? In some ways, only something that is extraordinarily over the top can capture our current moment. I mean, I think the same thing is true of another movie I wrote about, a very, very different kind of project, but the movie Eddington by Ari Aster, again, also very, very over the top, but in a way that actually captures, I think, the texture of what it is like to be alive now, in a way that few other things have.
So did this take courage from the creators, or is this just sort of like, we do this every week about everyone? And here my lack of familiarity with the show is perhaps coming through, but how much was this a deviation from?
No, I think it wasn't a deviation. I think this was basically treating the Trump administration the way they treat everyone else. And so I don't know how much it took courage and how much it's just what they do. And again, they're going to be fine. I think what it shows up, as I said before, is so many other people's like pronounced lack of courage.
But maybe it's because they've exercised those muscles on, I guess, a weekly basis, whereas maybe a law firm, or some people say Columbia University, isn't really used to saying, hey, our First Amendment rights are being brutalized by the President of the United States.
I mean, I guess nobody is used to their First Amendment rights being brutalized by the President of the United States. But, you would think Columbia University or Harvard or law firms that represent, kind of pro bono clients, they may, like, obviously they're not exercising their satire muscles, but you would think that they are exercising their like constitutional law muscles or their political philosophy muscles. So, I mean, again, this is to me the biggest mystery of the last 6 months, is this just like great institutional capitulation. And I can't tell if people have just decided that like our experiment in liberal democracy is over, and so it's not really worth fighting, or if they've decided that they're just going to put their heads down and protect themselves, or if they're really telling themselves that they can make some kind of come to some sort of good faith arrangement with an administration that, from my perspective, just wants to crush everything in its way.
So one of the great things about the South Park episode is that they have been doing exactly what they've been doing for 26 seasons before, but everyone else in society is bending over backwards to behave very differently than they were 1 year ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
right. I mean, I think like when you see at the beginning of the episode when they go back to school and their principal, who in previous episodes was known as PC principal and was like very aggressive in enforcing the rules of wokeness, and now he's kind of turned on a dime and now he's power Christian principal. And I think it captures their sense of like, what is everyone doing? Like, what is going on here? There's a sense of bafflement that I think echoes my bafflement
Yeah.
with the broader culture.
Yeah. I think the part of the muscles of satire, and I think adversarial law firms that litigate more have a different muscle, but also kind of counter the establishment or at least powerful organizations in a way that a lot of other organizations do not. You know, large universities, university leaders are very good at getting along with people, and that's the muscle they're quite good at, that they've exercised for a long time. And so now,
I
a
guess
different set of dispositions.
I think we're
Yeah.
seeing that. I mean, obviously we're seeing that. It's what I hear from people in universities. And I guess it's true, right? These jobs select for a certain sort of person who's very, who's kind of not combative and who's institutionally minded. At the same time, I don't understand how you could have kind of grown up in the United States, learned about authoritarianism in history, and not thought through, what would I do if it happened here?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
or not having any sort of, I don't understand, kind of how people look in the mirror.
Maybe we've always been this way, and it's just we were raised on history of the revolution, maybe dystopian fiction in which the hero stands up against the dystopian society. And so we've always envisioned that the American spirit would similarly resist, and it just hadn't been tested to this degree before.
Mhm.
And the reality is we don't resist. And I was just
and
so
that's the story in dystopian fiction, right? So it's just that I
Is
guess
that most
everybody
people
imagines
don't.
that they're the exception, or
We
at
all
least I
imagine
thought
that we're the
everybody
hero.
imagined that they were
Yeah.
the exception.
And from my position as an elected Republican, I just felt like I'm playing with house money because great, it's good to be here, but like my livelihood isn't ruined if this just goes away. And I assumed that a lot of people felt like they were playing with house money. But I'll tell you that taking that away, taking the status of being an elected official away from elected officials was treated like oxygen. And I think that we're finding out that more and more positions in society that defines them entirely. And if you're not the chair of a major international law firm, and if that gets taken away from you, then you've lost your whole identity and your whole being, which in some ways is really sort of sweet that people care about their professions that much, but it makes it that much harder to sort of resist a situation like this.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I look at people in politics and I was like, I had no idea that being in the House was that good of a job, that you would literally sell your soul to keep it. I mean, there's some people who aren't selling their soul. There's some people who are just happy to go along and who are all in, and maybe more and more of those people. But there's other people who clearly, sort of wish that they were serving under a different sort of administration, but are totally willing to make all the compromises. And again, I didn't realize, it seems like it's not like people leave the House and have to go work at McDonald's. Like there's
They
life
go work in a law
afterward.
firm. Yeah, right. So, I wanted to take a second on a different part of the South Park episode and ask you about a kind of cultural question. So this is about Cartman's identity crisis, right? So he's the guy who, for the 26 prior seasons, has been the anti-woke, anti-PC character that kind of embodies a certain kind of right-wing young person and fighting the power, right? And fighting the cancel culture. And then in episode 1, he has this total identity crisis because he realizes he's been mainstreamed and woke is dead. To me, that feels like a little bit of an optimistic take on the culture. Do you feel like there are right-wing people, young people on the right who were feeling anti-woke and now feel like, oh, now we're winning, now it's our moment, and we're no longer on the downside of the culture wars?
Well, I think there's obviously people on the right who, yes, feel like we're winning. This is culture's, Charlie Kirk and the rest. They feel like extremely triumphant. At the same time, I think there's people whose politics are, or whose stance towards society is fundamentally oppositional.
Right. That's
I think some of these podcast types, and also I think that's the creators of South Park. I mean, they've said in the past that Cartman basically represents their darkest impulses. And so, and so in some ways, Cartman is about, what does an anti-woke comedian do in a post-woke world? Because really, I mean, it's now like nothing could be like more tired and predictable at this point than whining about pronouns or, whatever is the sort of things that, that Cartman used to rebel against.
I believe it was Jews and fags, since I was new to the
Right.
show.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's his
among
normal
others.
thing.
Among others. Yeah.
I'm one of those too, so I can say it.
Right, among others.
Will this have an impact?
I mean, honestly, I hope that like just if ratings are good enough, I think it should send. I mean, obviously, you're going to still have some parent companies who sort of don't care that much about, for whom their broader business interests are going to take precedence over ratings. But I think if the show does well and lots of people are watching, and so far lots of people have been watching, it should just be a message to like the marketplace that there is a hunger for that, a hunger for this. And there's, at a certain point, there's like strength in numbers.
Yeah, I'm numbers, but I was just going to say, to me, the most powerful component was giving a permission structure for people who had voted for President Trump multiple times to say that they weren't liking the administration so far. So when they're all sitting in the bar and they're sort of disappointed, that to me was like, oh, maybe some people need to see, even from fictional character, that it's okay to deviate, even if you were previously part of the team.
Right. I mean, and I think that's kind of the people who they're speaking to, because my guess is that there are a lot of South Park viewers who voted for Donald Trump.
Right. And in episode 2, when they cover ICE, the satire is amazing. It's the school counselor loses his job, and they must have made this episode before the big beautiful bill, when there's going to be how many billions of dollars to recruit ICE agents.
So I'm not even positive about that, because I know historically they've worked super quickly.
Interesting.
I don't know the answer to that. But
Yeah.
I do think, I mean, the most amazing thing about that episode, I thought, was the raid on the Dora Explorer show, and then them dragging Dora the Explorer to Mar-a-Lago to make her give kind of Epstein-style massages. It just managed to squeeze so much grotesquerie into like one quick, tight storyline.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen episode 2, so
yeah, it's good. The Dora the Explorer is very good, and the counselor. The dark part of that for me is that Cartman deals with this identity crisis by becoming a hyper bully, right? So he out Charlie Kirk's Charlie Kirk.
Right. Well, that's, I mean, of course. Like, I mean, there was never going to be a redemption arc for Cartman.
He was never going to be a good guy, a good, whatever, 13-year-old. Yeah.
Eight, to be clear.
Oh, he's 8.
Yeah, they're 8.
I like that you know that. Does it take courage to write something like this at the New York Times? Because a lot of people would say, this is what you guys do. This is what the New York Times do. But the New York Times is in many ways, the pinnacle of writing still, and you don't want to get knocked off of that mountain. And so have you seen people sort of think twice before writing their columns?
I don't think so. I mean, does it take courage? Like, what's going to happen to me? I mean, I feel like the amount of courage it takes is so minuscule compared to like the kind of courage that people have actually had to show in, kind of authoritarian situations. I think the people, the places where you do see, I think, a real chill are people who don't have citizenship.
Absolutely.
I think among, like, I've heard this from other journalists, people who have green cards have to be very, very careful. And I think that it makes sense that they are taking a step back while they sort out their protections.
Yeah.
Okay, so Archon, favorite character or favorite episode?
Favorite character to me is Butters, I guess, who's kind of the sidekick of Cartman, who has some difficulties but is forced to attempt suicide by Cartman's overreach by asphyxiating himself in a car, but it turns out to be an electric car, so it's a little bit of a misguided adventure. What was your favorite scene?
Oh, I mean, I think that Jesus scene, I think the
Yeah,
two, the
that was-
Jesus scene you just showed, and then the Dora the Explorer at Mar-a-Lago.
yeah, that was really brilliant. And the door, that scene is like 5 seconds. The Door of the Explorer scene it's crazy. Yeah, good.
All right. Well, I'll have to watch episode 2, but thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We keep these at 30 minutes. We appreciate people tuning in. As always, let us know if you have any input or suggestions for future topics. Obviously, a lot's going on now politically. We'll be back at noon next Tuesday. Archon, parting thoughts?
Great. The as always, the audio version of this show is on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. And special thank you to Michelle for joining us. It's a real treat. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And thank you to in the backstage, Sarah Griska, Colette Anton, Courtney Carter De Jesus for organizing and producing the show. Hopefully see you next week.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.